What do you think of rage? What do you feel about anger? What comes up for you when something triggers you? Personally, it's not a very comfortable emotion for me. I don't like not only experiencing rage and anger for myself or in myself, but I don't like being around people who are angry or who are directing their anger toward me, right? It's just like, I don't like this. And I think that's pretty common. The question is that I'm looking at is, what's going on right now in our world? What's going on with this anger and this rage that seems to be getting out of hand? And why is it getting out of hand? First of all, we can look at what's going on in terms of war. We have gone year after year after year with war after war after war because we like to be rageful. We like to blame. We like to attack. We like to get physical and go into these messy, muddy places and kill each other, right? We look at the gun violence that's happening and how people will just randomly shoot a bunch of people. Why? Because they were happy? No. And is it just that they're mentally ill, or is there something deeper? And then we look at, let's say, our political campaigns and how there is often a lot of mudslinging. And right now with the U.S. presidential race, we have Trump, who is really running an angry campaign where it's about blaming Muslims, blaming Mexicans, blaming others, but not just in a sense that is normal mudslinging, but almost in a sense of let's get those people, right? So earlier this week, I had an experience in which I was at my son's varsity basketball game, and the other team was extremely hostile. They were this way last year. In fact, it's the only team that we've dealt with that has had this level of anger and hostility. And it's a very rural high school, and our high school is quite suburban, and I live rurally, but this particular area, this particular school was seething. And it made it so uncomfortable that by the end of the game, not only was one player ejected and he kicked his way and threw things on his way out of the gym, but one of the fans was ejected. And it was really uncomfortable. I left shaking and uncomfortably scared even because of this seething hostility towards us, the bad guys, the other team, and my son in particular. I'm wanting to look at this rage, this anger, this sense of what's, popping up for us this year, but also as we move into our own collective awakening, because I do see that it will continue to come up for us, and we need, as those who are kind of more conscious and have more willingness to be striving for peacefulness and maintaining composure, what tools do we use that will help us not only deal with our own rage, our own situations when we come up against this anger and this rage, but how do we transform it in ways that are healthy? I know this is a really bad view, but this is what I have in terms of how my camera gets set up while I'm driving. And I know driving and talking to a video isn't ideal as a viewer for you, but I just was just screaming at my husband, and I got totally triggered. And it's ironic because well, first of all, I don't want to have to talk about my personal life necessarily in terms of just my all the shit. But secondly, I got really frustrated last week when I was looking at this whole piece of anger, because I'm thinking, I don't want to talk about anger. I hate anger. I mean, seriously, it's like I can't stand the whole, emotion and how do I deal with it and all of that. But on top of it, it's like, why would I even start this conversation when I don't even know how to cope with it myself, right? But let me just kind of go into a little picture here. So, for us, I'll go personal for a minute. So for us, my husband and I are really, really struggling. Okay, so, and the frustrating thing is that we've been struggling basically our entire adult lives. It's like we'll have these little breakthroughs where things like, oh, they're gonna ease up, and then it just doesn't happen. So what triggers me personally is that feeling that no matter what I do isn't good enough. No matter how hard I work, it's not enough. No matter how much we give or how much integrity that we are in, it doesn't pay. It doesn't give back. We don't get our needs met. So when I go to these places, I tend to retreat and I tend to lash out. And not only do I feel not supported by the universe, right? But I certainly don't feel supported by him, because as I've described to him many a time, just like we're both in this boat together, and we've got like a stick that we're trying to, paddle with, and neither one of us has the solution. It's like, so what's the point? It's like there's nobody knows what the hell they're doing. And what the hell we're doing means, how do we function in this world? So as much as I have all this, divine information and connection to source that feels so yummy, and that I can see and feel the perfection of all that is in many of my waking hours, when I lose that stability here on the earth plane, then I lose my sense of stability everywhere. Which brings me to this place of, looking at the anger, looking at the rage. So in our attempts to shift consciousness, we cannot necessarily do that from a mountaintop anymore. In other words, Martin Luther King did not change things by prayer alone, by speaking in a congregation safely and saying, what should it look like? What should America be doing, right? Nelson Mandela spent years in prison, right, for being the voice of truth. The whole women's suffrage movement was not a calm little, picketing, right? As we tried to shift consciousness out of where we are in our stuckness. Now, for me personally, it happens to be around kind of functioning as a human being in these basic ways, which is, around the financial piece. That is such a big one for me. And I'm like, what happened here? But what I realize when I look at this a little more objectively is that soul me, for whatever friggin' reason, decided to come in and experience the basic struggle of survival, of being human, so that not only can I help transcend that, but I can, and I don't mean for me personally, I mean for a collective, for me personally, but also for a collective, but that I could be relatable to other people who get it, who get me, right? Either way, I don't care why I'm doing it. It doesn't feel good to be in it in the moment. That said, I don't think I need to sacrifice, many years in prison or be shot or have to go out and, be on the streets, picketing, but I could. So my personal movement is through this Whole Soul Revolution show. My personal movement is to affect, millions of people with consciousness, with relatability, with shifting the energies through my actions, my personal actions. So whenever I feel like an utter failure by how I can't function in the world or how I can't make it, and I start screaming at my husband because he's part of the problem with me, we're both just totally ill-equipped, I guess, he'll remind me about what great children we have. Because we do. And it's taken everything we have to be the people that we are in integrity. And being conscious and loving and supportive of our children in spite of the challenges that make it somewhat rewarding to be human. And that kind of helps negate what feels like utter failure. So I will share a positive story in this. I had some kind of vision about, how would I redo my life if I got to redo my life, And I really thought I was going to go back to redoing the part of my life that was really painful when my husband basically had a nervous breakdown after another nervous breakdown for 6 horrible years, and our family was torn apart. So when I had this vision, it didn't go to that place of just redoing that piece and like having an intact family and everything going well. It went way back to when I was a child. And it wasn't even as if it was this lifetime necessarily, but it kind of was. But the vision was I was raised by some hippie parents, right? And, there's nothing wrong with my mom, but I never had a dad, right? And so in this vision that just kind of hit me, it was a mom and a dad, and they were just very, earthy, hippie, love, right? And so I shared this vision with my kids. I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And my daughter, she's like, of course you did, teasing me for being so hippie-ish. And so I said, well, what would you change if you got to redo your childhood and redo things? What would you change? And she looked at me. Now she's 22 and teases me a lot for, how we are. And she says, nothing. I would change nothing. She said that I think that because we didn't have anything, because we struggled, it made me work for everything I have. It made me have the integrity and the ethics that I have in terms of applying myself. And the same for, her brother. She says, I think that's what makes us such good workers, so I wouldn't change anything. I liked how we were raised. And so that was that wee bit moment of, okay. So when I'm in a better state, I'll share a little bit more about anger. I'll look at it a little bit more objectively, and we'll see what comes, because I have no idea. All right. So I am much calmer than I was yesterday. And fortunately for me, when I was losing it yesterday and driving away from my house, I wasn't escaping. I was actually going somewhere. I was going on a hike with some friends. A friend of mine had a birthday celebration and invited a lot of us to go on a hike with her. And so it was like the perfect remedy for my rage, for my fits, right? To go meet up with a group of, 10, 15 women who I hadn't seen in a long time and go on a 7.5 mile, 3.5 hour hike. down into the canyon, across and through and around the river, and back up, and wobbling my way to the top again. And it beat me up. It beat me up physically, but it also held my soul. And it wasn't just the beautiful views and the movement and the nature, but it was connecting with the friends during those steps that we made along the way. And one of my friends in particular, she was the one that sort of carried me, at least energetically, up that last leg, and stayed with me as I got, gosh, it's been a while. Anyway, we went very deep in terms of our conversation around anger and rage, and I got some aha moments about what had transpired, with me and my husband, but not just in that morning situation, but also in this pattern, right? When we really see patterns for what they are, patterns, we can start to say, hey, is this a pattern I enjoy in my life, or is this something I want to start to shift? Those ahas were things that allowed me to see how I could approach my own anger, my own sense of feeling helpless and, victimized, and all this stuff that comes up for me. And not just allow it to just get buried again until the next explosion, but for me to say, hey, let's bring this to the surface when I'm not so touchy, when I'm not so upset. And it was really clear that what I needed to do and share with my husband, I could do it alone, but given that this is our situation, is to look at this when we're not in a wounded place, when we're not so testy and frustrated, and to look at our wounds themselves, not the financial situation, because the financial situation is really a symptom of other stuff. What I see with my clients, and pretty much everyone, right, is that our greatest wounds, whatever they may be, are really sort of the crust or the covering that protects our greatest gifts. Now, in all honesty, I am an incredible manifester. And so it's sort of ironic that I would have these, struggles around the financial piece. And at the same time, it's sort of where I keep myself protected, right? That what rage and anger does is it protects us from not just feeling things, right? Because we can go into blame and blaming others, but it helps us really protect that magical, mystical, powerful part of ourselves that we aren't quite sure what to do with yet. So I want to summarize by saying that when you have your moments of like I did, call a friend, go in nature, connect with someone that you can trust, and in a place that you can feel safe, right? And it happened to work. That's what worked for me yesterday. But on top of it, be willing to say, what's really there? Not the issue itself, but what's really there? And generally, if you look at that wound and look a little bit deeper, turn it over to the other side, you'll see a gift that you have been denying tapping into. And we can talk about that another time. But in the meantime, let's see what 2016 holds for us as a country, as an individual, as a collective. Are we going to let our rage navigate our future? Are we going to use our rage as a way to make changes that we want to see? If we are feeling something's unjust in the world, how can we use that to make changes in positive ways? Or do we get upset and then lash out at others in ways that are harmful? These are choices. And so we may not always make the perfect choice, and we do the best we can, generally speaking. But when we are conscious, we can take a breather, feel into the rage, explode perhaps, maybe with a safe person. The beauty is my husband can generally hold my anger and not take it personal and hold space for me. Sometimes he does take it personal. I do forgive myself, and I am so apologetic to him for going to those personal places, because I sometimes do that. But to be able to release that anger, but also to take the time to say, now what's really here, and how can I start to cultivate something more positive from this? So with that, Enjoy your rage? No. Experience your rage to the fullest in a way that is safe, in a way that works, and forgive yourself for being human.